Rob on the mic, spitting truth from the heights. Queens unite under stadium lights. Bright nights, 7 train rides. Dreams born in the real hum. Brooklyn to Queens, yeah, we all about that outcome. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. From Flushing Meadows, echoes bounce off the bat. Rob calls, take the mic, snaps like a thunderclap. Home runs over bridges, no gaps in the story. Mets rise, reclaiming the glory. 7 the city, blue and orange army swarm. Summer vibe electric, love in every form. From Biggie's blocks to Flushing's heartbeat. Our anthem loud, no retreat. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. The apple pops in the outfield, city of dreams. Rob's voice over static, Mets on every stream. White lines mapped out the future, vividly. From shade to city, the journey's never gimmicky.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to Mets Talk Live right here on the channel and on X. And Mets fans, we get to take a deep breath on this off day as the Mets head to Milwaukee, Wisconsin to take on the best team in baseball in the Milwaukee Brewers, as the New York Mets are spiraling out of control as quickly as we can say Mets. That is how fast they are spiraling out of control. Nothing has been good for this team, from rotation to lineup. The bullpen is still trying to find its way with all the new additions to the team since the deadline. But the New York Mets have not played well for a decent amount of time now, right? They had that 7-game winning streak, in July. Started to look good. And ever since then, they kind of been, a 500 team. A below 500 team, and it just hasn't been what we expected. We expected this lineup to show up at some point this year. We're going on game 115 of the season, and it still is nowhere to be found. The offense has been a shell of what everybody thought it's going to be. I mean, this lineup should be scoring 5 to 6 runs per game on average, right? That should be the average, at least somewhere between 5 and 6 runs per game, somewhere in between there. And they're scoring between 3 and 4 runs per game. It's very hard to win that way. And with the rotation that is not really doing its job either, it kind of all bottles into one big old shit job when it comes to trying to win ball games and losing to teams that you probably should beat. Like the Guardians aren't world beaters. Like we've seen, like they're a tight knit team, right? They don't make a ton of errors. They play the game hard, and they try to minimize their mistakes, right? But they're not a great team by any means. And the Mets should actually, beat these type of teams. They should have beat the Giants, as they took care of them in San Francisco, but they couldn't do it at Citi Field as they had a 1-5 homestand. It's just an overall problem. Like, you can pick anything on this roster. You can pick any part of the team, and we can have a conversation for an hour of the problems with this team. And that is why the topic of the day for the first question, are the Mets on the brink here? Because, again, there's not a lot of games left in the season, guys. Not a lot of games left by any means. There's, it's just, I'm trying not to be so negative for the most part. I'm not trying to be, because I know I got that title of being Mr. Negative, but I'm trying not to be. So this isn't going to be a complete negative blow to the New York Mets right now, because I've done that enough during post games and during pre games over the last week or so. But you got 47 games left. 47 games left. Clearly, David Stearns doesn't see urgency to bring up the prospect pitchers, or one of them, or two of them, or whoever he might bring up. There's no urgency from David Stearns. And that's where I want to start with when it comes to the urgency of this team, right? We've heard this word before. We heard it in years past that there doesn't seem to be urgency on the um organization's mind or the team's mind. It just doesn't feel like there's any urgency. It's like they're kind of tripping over themselves and hitting a bunch of speed bumps trying to ride it into the playoffs. And honestly, guys, they're 2.5 games out of a division, right? It's not like they've been, they're completely falling apart, and they're 6, 7 games out of a division, right? But right now, they're in the third wild card, right? We would be facing the third best team in baseball, and right now that would be the Phillies. So we would play a wild card round against the Philadelphia Phillies if the season ended today. That's where we are. It would be the number 1 team against the number 2 team in the wild card. It would be the Cubs and the Padres facing off, and then the Phillies against the Mets in Philadelphia for 3. That's what it would be today. Obviously, we got 47 games to go, but the Mets have a 3-game lead on the next team, the 4th team in the wild card, the team right behind them. So we got a 3-game lead, and then it's a little bit distance from there. You got 5-game lead, 5.5, and 6. So you're kind of okay, kind of, because I don't think any of those teams are going to go on a type of run that you have to worry about it. It's just a matter of, are you going to win a division, or on what position are you going to be in the wild card, 1, 2, or 3? That is basically what we're doing here, right? I don't think the Reds are going to go on any type of run, or the Giants any type of run. I don't trust the Cardinals and the Marlins, even though the Marlins have played better, but they just got beaten up not too long ago after they swept the Yankees. As bad as the Mets played over the last 10 games, they have 2-8. It's on the bottom right of your screen. The last 10 games are 2-8. With that 2-8, and again, just go by a 10-game stretch. I like to go in 10-game intervals because I think 10 games are it kind of goes in crazy directions with a 10-game span. The Philadelphia Phillies, if I just say the Philadelphia Phillies, people are like, oh, they're playing well. Well, in the last 10 games, they're playing 500 baseball. They're 5-5. While the Mets are 2-8, they're 5-5. There's your difference in division. 2.5 games. That's 10 games right there. So if it gets flipped and the Phillies go 2-8 and the Mets are 5-5, you'll be right, either tied or a half a game ahead or half a game behind. That is why I like to go in 10-game intervals when it comes to, especially when it gets closer and closer to the end of the season, because it's not as bad as it looks on paper. Like, the games just feel no sense of urgency. And you know what? Philly fans are talking about the same thing. They're not overly excited about this Phillies team being 2.5 games up on the division. They were talking about it yesterday, and I listened to it a little bit today, but mostly I listened to Philly Sports Talk Radio yesterday because I want to get the vibe of what the fans are feeling. They don't feel like the Phillies are playing well either. So even though they have a 2.5-game lead, they know that they're 5-5 in their last 10. They know they haven't played great. Like, Schwarber has been their best player on their team, and everybody else has been, kind of average in their lineup and in the rotation. Their rotation even has, it's been better than the Mets, but it hasn't been that great either. So they've been scuffling as well. They haven't been playing as great as it seems when you look at the Mets being 2.5 games out of first place. And somewhat safe in the third wild card spot. And again, the third wild card spot, we're a few games behind the Cubs, 3.5 games, or technically 3, if you 3.5, and there were 1 game behind the Padres. And what sucks about it is that the Padres, they beat us up, right? So I think we won 2 out of 3 against the Padres in New York, and then they swept us, so they have the season series. So the tiebreaker comes into play there. When you're looking at it. And the Cubs, we don't play until the end of the season. And I think the Mets lost 2 out of 3 against the Cubs. I don't even remember. It was a while ago, but let me just check. Let me just double check. I just want to double check really quickly. I think they played him. When did they play the Cubs? think it was in like May. Yeah. All right, so they took 2 out of 3 against the Cubs, and we don't face them until the end of the season, the second to last series of the year on the road in Chicago. That can be a huge series for both teams, especially if both teams aren't going to win the division. They can be fighting for a wild card spot, or at least one of the wild card spots, and tiebreakers can come into play. So the final 6 games of the year is against Chicago and Miami on the road. So, and we go to San Diego faces us at home in September. So the only way we can not have a tiebreaker or not have a tiebreaker have a come into play is if we sweep the Padres at home the second to last week of the season. Like, that's what we're gonna have to be talking about here. We're gonna have to talk about tiebreakers now, even with the Phillies and even with the Padres, the Cubs. Like, the teams that we have to worry about, those 3 teams, I think, is our main focus here. We don't face the Cubs, we don't face the Padres until September, to the second and last week of the year. So, and we face the Phillies 4 times in September, and then 3 times in August at the end of the month, and that's it. We got 7 more games against them. So, these tiebreakers are going to really be talked about and should be talked about more. And again, saying that the Mets are on the brink, and that has been the topic of the day on X on the off day. People are talking about it. Are the Mets on the brink here? Are they on the verge of collapsing, so to speak? I don't think so. I truly don't. I truly don't. I think they've weathered the storm. Like, even how they're playing now wasn't what they did in June. June was so bad that the Mets aren't even there yet in terms of how they're playing right now. Hasn't been good, but it hasn't been June bad yet. Again, still a whole month of August. But going into the homestand, I was like, all right, we got the Giants. We swept them before. I think we have a good shot against them. They traded a couple of guys off their roster. So, and they beat us 2 out of 3. The Padres, we just can't beat them. I'm sorry. The Guardians were red hot coming in, and again, the Guardians weren't great. The Mets just didn't play well. Like, errors, bad at bats, defense, everything, pitching, everything was just bad in that series. And then on this homestand. Well, committee, no. If you really think about it, Juan Soto was the only one hitting in the month of June, right? So, hey, Anthony, I appreciate that, buddy. Yeah, like, Juan Soto was the only one hitting in June. So, if you really think about it, who's really hitting well now at the moment right now? Like, it just started the month, right? You could say Lindor has had better at bats than probably anybody on this team right now. So it's June was Soto. Like, here's the problem: you can't find a month in this season where there was more than one guy red hot at the top of the lineup. That's the problem. It's not about them being hot. It's about, because they've been hot on their own individual months. They haven't put it together, at least 2 of them, in the same month, because it's very hard to get through a lineup when 2 of the guys are red hot at the top of the lineup. Because it's easier to pitch when one guy is hot, because you can pitch around them and you can let everybody else fail. So, it feels like that, because even in June, the Phillies were playing really bad in June as well. That was one of their worst months of the season as well. They weren't playing well either. So we were hovering just like they were hovering, and why the changes in games wasn't that much. But, since the whole month of July into August, we've been going back and forth, a half a game up, a game and a half up, a game and a half down, half a game down, tied. Nobody has really gone on that run. And some believe that the Phillies are going to. But again, I just gave you the numbers. In their last 10 games, they're 5-5. It's not like they're 8-2 or 9-1 or 10-0 or even 7-3. They're 5-5. They're not playing that much better. They're playing a little bit better, but they're not playing drastically better where we're like, they're going to run away with this. There hasn't been a point this year where the Mets or the Phillies have looked like they were going to run away with it because they've been very inconsistent, just like the Mets. Like, just think, guys, I've been complaining about this team the entire season, right? The offense has been bad all year. At least the Phillies offense has shown up at times, more often than not. And the pitching was good for the first 2 months for the Mets, a rotation, and then after that, it hasn't been. But the Phillies haven't been that much better. We're 2.5 games worse than them. Like, that's the difference right now when it comes to the division. And that's why I think the division is more obtainable than the number one wild card spot, because you face the Phillies 7 more times. You only face the Padres and the Cubs 3 more times. And you're going to face more division teams. We face the Braves a little bit more. We face the Marlins a lot more. So we have division games here where we got to take control over what we can control right now. And the only thing we can't control what the Phillies do. We can't control what the Padres do or the Cubs do. All we can control is what we do. We control this next 3-game series on the road, which is a very odd road trip when you got 6 at home, 3 on the road, and then back at home for another 6. Very odd. Very, very odd. But the way I see it is that it could be a lot worse. It really could be a lot worse, in my opinion, because the Phillies haven't played that much better, right? It feels like the Phillies have played outstanding baseball, right? That's the way it feels, but they really haven't. And it's not like they've been playing like the murderer's row of baseball here. They haven't been playing great teams either, and they have been struggling, not as much as the Mets, but close to it. Again, the last 10 games, they're 5-5, and we're 2-8. It's only a 3-game difference, which is why the Mets are 2.5 games out. Like, that is the difference within 10 games. The last 10 games is the difference from being tied or a half a game up or half a game behind. And those 3 games is the reason why, out of the 10, is why those 3 losses out of the 10 are why we're 2.5 games out. So the Phillies face, let's see, the Phillies don't play today. The Phillies face Texas. So the Phillies are going to Texas to face the Rangers, who took 2 out of 3 against the Yankees, and they're trying to fight for a wild card spot as well. So they're not going to be easy. So again, we're facing the best team in the National League. They're facing a pretty hot team in the Rangers. Again, the Mets have control over their own destiny here. If the Mets play better, I'm fully confident they're going to win this division. I fully believe that, because I don't think the Phillies are that much better than us, if they even are better than us. I think it's, and that is even with me saying I can't stand this rotation, which I will get to. Don't worry. I won't forget about that as a topic tell you. All right. I fully believe this team is still going to win the NL East. I'm fully confident in that. Why I'm confident in that, I don't know. I haven't had anything to drink, I promise. I promise. But I feel that way. I don't know why. Truman, I don't even think we're the Phillies of last year. I don't think so, because the Phillies ran away with the division last year. So they kind of just took off with that division while the Braves and the Mets were fighting for a wild card spot. So I do feel like the reason why there is so much upside with this team when it comes to the offense, why I am still confident that they're going to turn this around offensively. When will that be? I just feel like we have enough guys that have numbers in clutch situations and in late in seasons and late and into the playoffs that prove to me that they've done this before. That I have that confidence in them that they're going to pull it out and they're going to figure it out. I know there's only 47 games left, but crazier things has happened. I'd rather them struggle through the first 4 months and be outstanding in the next 2 months, the last 2 months of the season. I would rather have that. But I still believe that I feel very confident that the Mets are going to win this division. Now, I know the offensive struggles. I know the problems with the rotations, as I got some nice goody stats for you for the pitching, because everybody wants to throw out the lineup stats with the runners in scoring position, which have been disastrous. But I got some lovely stats for you when it comes to the pitching and why it's so much of a problem. And why I truly believe that the pitching could be the downfall of this team, not during the season, because I think, again, as bad as the Mets pitching has been, the pitching isn't going to, you can survive this type of pitching to make the playoffs. It's just when you get to the playoffs is where I'm concerned that I don't think the starting pitch is going to be good enough. And I think it's going to ultimately kill us. So we got knocked out in the wildcard game written all over us. Yeah, I know, but we all said that probably last year too, right? Again, guys, we were 1 out away. We were a few outs away from getting bumped in a wild card last year, and we would have been talking about a fun story going to the NLCS. We would have got knocked out saying, oh, we weren't good enough. We kind of blew that series against the Brewers because I think we played better than them in that series prior to game 3. And look, make the playoffs because, again, there is not one team that is dominant in Major League Baseball that you can pinpoint and say that team is going to win. Now, of course, you're going to look at the betting odds, and it's probably the Dodgers. It's probably the Yankees somewhere around there. Probably the Mets just right around there, and the Phillies. But I don't care about the betting odds. The fact is that there's no dominant team. Even the Dodgers very much have flaws, just like every other team. Like, the Brewers have the best record in baseball. Do we really believe that they're the best? Like, they're unbeatable? Seriously, guys. Do we really think the Brewers are unbeatable here? No, we don't. We don't believe that at all. Now, they're playing very well, but they're not unbeatable. I don't think there's a team drastically better than the New York Mets. And again, when you get to the playoffs, that shit goes out the window. The records go out the window. Even the looking at the roster side by side doesn't tell you who's going to win that series. I said this for a while. The NFL and the NBA are the two leagues still where the best teams usually win the championship. Usually the top 2 teams in the league usually win the championship. In baseball and hockey has always, for a while now, just get into the playoffs. You get into the playoffs, there's a really good shot you have a chance to win a Stanley Cup. Major League Baseball, the playoffs now is very similar to the NHL, where all you got to do is get in. It doesn't matter if you're a wild card team, doesn't matter if you're the 3rd best record in the league or National League or American League, just get in. Because all you need to do is get 1 or 2 hot pitchers and a couple of maybe 1 or 2 bats that get hot, and you can run to the World Series and possibly win one. Were the Mets ever better than any of those teams they faced in the playoffs? They might, even people saying the Brewers were better than the Mets last year in a wild card. They weren't better than the Phillies on paper, and they weren't better than the Dodgers on paper, and we took them to game 6. So the teams that we faced, according to many people, weren't better than those teams they were facing, the Mets. Yet they beat 2 out of 3 of them and took the Dodgers, who eventually won the World Series, to a game 6. So, it really doesn't matter. To be honest with you, just get into the playoffs. Find a way over these next 47 games to make the playoffs. Right now, you're comfortable in the 3rd wild card, 3 games ahead of the team behind you. You're a game behind the Padres and 3.5 behind the Cubs, which, again, a 10-game stretch. Again, I don't want people to worry about game 37 left of the season. Worry about the next 10. So from 47 games left, which is tomorrow, to game 37. Those 10 games, look at that. You got 47 games to go. Break it down to 10-game intervals. And I'm going to show you how inconsistent all these teams are that we're worried about and that we're trying to fight and to win a division with the Phillies. Because, again, we haven't played bad, but the other teams, especially the Phillies, have not played great either. They just been a little bit better. So saying the Mets are on the brink is the proper turn, considering the fact that that's probably the way people are talking about the Mets, right? And I don't know how many people listen to WFAN. I know some people don't like it anymore, but again, I don't always agree with a lot of those guys. But with Salicata today, and he was saying, he goes, I'm not worried about this team. He goes, do they have problems? Absolutely. He goes, the reason why I am on the side of Salicata when he says this, that I'm not worried about this team, is because there's still upside on this team. Now, I don't agree that the rotation's upside is anywhere. Now, Salicata thinks that they're going to stabilize. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe in the rotation. I don't. But the lineup has such drastic upside that if they turn it on, I'm not concerned. Because there's that chance that they're going to take that next level, that level that everybody expected them to, because it's there. You can't be this bad and not have any upside. Like, all they have to do is be average over these next 47 games, just overall offensive stats. So this offense has been terrible all year, but they don't need to be where everybody thought they would have been on that top level. All they need to be is average from what they have been. If they become an average offensive team, and that is exactly right, they've been scoring between 3 and 4 runs per game. If they can score between 4 and 5 runs per game, that's only a 1 run more. They would win more games, just like that. That is how minuscule the difference is. Just be an average offensive team. They've been way below average. Just be average. And average doesn't mean excellent. I'm talking about guys just doing a little bit more at the top. We should expect more, but just give me average offensive numbers from the top 4 guys. I think that's going to drastically change everything. I truly believe that. So I know it's frustrating. I know people are going to destroy, like, people are talking about Soto's demeanor and blah, blah, all that nonsense. Again, guys, if you're playing like he's been playing, how are you going to look? Are you just going to be, skipping to the right field and skipping to the dugout? No, you're going to have a demeanor that looks like he's not trying. Right? All of us are going to be like that. When you're not playing well, you're going to look like Pete Alonso had that attitude last year. Right? He always was down on himself. His head was down. Same thing. Lindor did it back in 2021. He did it in April and May last year. Like, only Brendan Nimmo is the one that's, this continues to looking jolly old happy. Right? But it's important to realize that don't look at a guy's demeanor when they're down, when they're not playing well, because it's always going to look bad. I don't care who you are. And especially if you're making a lot of money, of course people are going to just focus in on you. They did it to Lindor. They now doing it with Juan Soto. So don't look at it when they're playing decent. Not great, not totally bad, but in between. Because that's probably their real focus and their real demeanor. And yeah, I agree with you, Easy. Alvarez and Vientos, they need to step up. Don't think for a second that those 2 guys weren't the biggest problem, one of the biggest problems of why this lineup is struggled. Yes, it's all about Alonso and Soto and Lindor and Nimmo. But what we were talking about in the beginning of the season is the depth of this lineup of Alvarez and Vientos being 20-plus home run guys. When is none of them going to do that unless they go on a crazy tear. Or at least Vientos, because I don't think Alvarez is going to hit 18 home runs in 2 months. I mean, he can, but I don't see that happening. So these guys were Vientos was basically an all-star player last year once he took the spot over from Beatty at third base. He's been bad defensively and lost his job, and he hasn't hit anywhere near he did last year. Like the power has been like wiped out from him. It's frustrating because we were counting on 25 home runs plus from Vientos. We have what, 7 from him? Like I think all the third basemen combined, we might have like what, 20 home runs combined with all the third basemen that played this year for us. That's not that's hard to deal with in a lineup that should have been much better. Alvarez, the same thing. How many home runs did we get from all our catchers? 5? When we were expecting 25 to 30 from our catchers combined? Like, that's nearly 50 home runs or 45 home runs from our third baseman and catcher we were expecting, when we might have maybe 30 combined from all those guys. That's very hard to deal with in a lineup that is now putting all the pressure on the top 4 guys, where guys 5 through 9 are basically non-existent. Like, it's literally an out 5 through 9. Like, it's very hard to win that way. Very hard. I don't care who's in your top 4. Sanders, do they need a power hit in third baseman? Sure. I mean, just give me another power in another position. I don't care where it is. But the power should have been mainly from the top 4 guys, right? How many home runs does Soto have? 26? Pete Alonso has what, 24, 25? Lindor has what, 21? Nimmo has what, 18? Like, these guys are going to be between 25 and 30 home runs plus for most of these guys. Truman, I wouldn't say we have the worst 5 through 9 in baseball. I mean, look around baseball. It's not very good. Like, we're watching the Phillies. Have you looked at their 5 through 9? Their 1 through 4 does all the work. And mostly it's been Schwarber this year, not anybody else. Like, there's a lot of down seasons from Harper, Turner. They're not having great seasons. It's been basically the Schwarber show. So let's not act like the Phillies offense has been drastically better, because they really haven't. Like, the offensive numbers, like I'm just gonna do this really quick because I wanted to just show them. Let's see, offense. Let's see. Hold on, guys. All right, here we go. Here we go. We got some splits here. I like the splits. Let's see. All right, so the Phillies are 9th with runners in scoring position, just based on all the stats. Like, they numbered all the stats and they kind of made a percentage of it, right? The Mets have hit, let's see, 33 home runs with runners in scoring position. The Phillies have hit 37. So a 4 home run difference, right? The Mets have hit 8 triples, 42 doubles, and overall 212 hits with runners in scoring position. The Phillies have 245, which is a 30 hit difference. They have hit same 8 triples and 42 doubles. So they hit basically the same. The only difference, there's been more hits. So more singles with runners in scoring position, around 30 more hits. That is probably the biggest number there, right? The home runs are very similar. The triples are very similar. The doubles are very similar. But when it comes to just getting the base hit, it is 30 hits difference. That is huge. And you just look at the average, right? The batting average is 257 while the Mets are 231. But it's 20-point difference. Like, that is basically where it's at when you look at the overall spectrum of like how much of from 9th to 17th where the Mets are with runners in scoring position on overall stats. It's basically one number or one area where it's been bad. It's basically the single with runners in scoring position. It hasn't been the home runs, hasn't been the triples, hasn't been the doubles, because they're on par with the Phillies there. It's the base hit, the single. That has been the difference. It's been the lack of runners in scoring position by just putting the bat on the ball and hit a base hit. That is it. A single. That's it. That has been the difference between where the Phillies are ninth with runners in scoring position, and is basically the average is why they're there, ninth, and where the Mets are 17th, because every other stat is very similar when it comes to home runs, doubles, triples, with runners in scoring position. Their numbers are basically identical in those stat lines. But the average is almost a 35 point difference. So what does that tell you? Their hits, they have about 30 more hits with runners in scoring position, mostly singles. The singles are the difference. The singles are the difference. So it's basically you get men on base, get a goddamn base hit. That is the difference between the two teams, is that the Phillies will drive in runs by getting a single. The Mets haven't done that much at all. That is the difference between the teams. And again, that just shows you how much the Phillies offense isn't that much better. They've been better by hitting singles with runners in scoring position. But ultimately, the numbers are very similar in every other area on the offensive stat line, from home runs, doubles, triples, OPS, slugging, all that. All very similar except one stat, the hits, the singles with runners in scoring position. And, with this era of baseball where it's about launch angle, where they don't care about average and strikeouts, that is basically the difference between the Mets being 17th in baseball and 9th where the Phillies are. That is crazy. That is the difference. Yeah, Nick, I understand learning the fundamentals of baseball, but half of that crap has gone out the window in baseball nowadays, right? The baseball that I grew up and loved was all about average, was all about getting those runs in, right? It was average, runs, and RBIs. It wasn't really about the home runs, right? Because there was only a certain few guys that hit over 30 home runs. Like, go back in the early 2000s, even with the steroid era. There wasn't a lot of guys that hit 30 home runs. When you hit 30 home runs, everybody's like, wow, look at that. 30 plus home runs. That was rare. It was a lot of guys that hit 25 or less home runs, but their average was over 300, 290 to 300 or over, right? They had their RBIs, they had their hits, they might have been a doubles machine. It's different now. So average doesn't matter in baseball no more, and strikeouts don't matter in baseball no more. Why is that? I don't know. I don't understand how a strikeout doesn't matter in baseball. At least if you put the bat on the ball, the fielder can make an error. I always said that, and this is always frustrates me about the Mets, and this has been for years, is that when you have runners on, put the ball in play. Because not only can the defense make an error, they can be, an indifference of what they're supposed to do with that ball. They can basically think they're not thinking what they're supposed to do with the ball prior to the at-bat or prior to the ball getting hit to them. Let them have an indecision. Let them make the mental mistake. Let them make the throwing error. Let them make the fielding error. Putting the bat on the ball, even if it's not a productive at-bat where you're going to get a base hit or a double, triple, home run, put the ball in play, because something might happen where the fielder might throw it away, they might bobble the ball, or they might just have an indifference of what they're supposed to do with the ball and make a stupid decision. And that is where I think baseball has gone in the wrong direction there. But overall, I think all the Mets, I think the way the Mets get back on track offensively, or at least start to get on track this year offensively, is stop trying to worry about hitting the home runs with runners on base. Get a base hit. Hit the ball the other way. I don't see why they're over swinging. Like, to get out of these ruts that you're in with runners in scoring position, just go and try to hit a base hit. Don't try to do too much. All of them overswing. Look, watch tomorrow. The Mets will have men on base because the Mets constantly have men on base. That hasn't been their problem. That's why when people say, oh, we should have got Quan, we should have got this guy, more guys that get on base, the Mets don't need to get on base more. They can get on base more than enough. Obviously, yesterday they got almost no hit. They didn't have no base runners for the most part. But they just need to get the runners in. They had more than enough people on base. Just get the ball in play. Put the ball in play. Get a base hit. Stop trying to swing for the fences. You'll see it. They'll have runners on tomorrow. Watch how much these guys squeeze the bat a little tighter and try to hit a 500-foot home run. There's no need for that. Yes, if you connect on a ball, great. But we all know, right? The power is pure. You don't need to swing out of your shoes to hit a home run. These guys are all strong. You get it on the good part of the bat, get a little bit under the ball, boom, over the wall. They don't need to do too much. They seem to be doing way too much. Simplify it. Bat to ball. Hit a single. Don't try to do too much. Hit the ball up the middle. Hit the ball to the opposite field. At the very least, put the bat on the ball, get a sac fly. Like, I just don't understand why they're trying to hit a home run every single time. I think that's been their big problem. That has been Juan Soto's big problem. And remember what I said last week, guys, about Juan Soto? Right? His best attribute as a hitter is hitting that ball to left center field. Like, they're hitting that ball from center to left. That is where he's at his best, right? That home run he hit yesterday was dead center. Right? That is when he's at his best. When he's hitting balls, when he's driving balls to center to left center, that is when he's at his best. What he's been doing too much this year, and I think Yankee Stadium has a lot to do with it, because you get pull happy as a lefty at Yankee Stadium. He's pulling off on pitches middle of the plate, outside of the plate, where it's middle and just on the outside corner of the plate, on the left side of the plate. He's rolling over those pitches and continue to hit it to the second baseman because he's trying to pull that ball. The best Juan Soto is when he's driving that ball to left center and left center. That is his big problem. All year. Again, I told you guys to pay attention to it. Look what he did in this homestand. All he was doing was pulling that ball that was on the outside corner, even the ball that was middle, where he should be driving that ball to center field, driving that ball up the middle. He's rolling over on it because he's trying to pull. He's stepping in the bucket, and he's burying the ball to center field. To second base. That is what he's doing. Let's see. I'm sorry, Consuelo. I'm trying to find your full bases and then no hit. Yeah. Just put the barrel on the ball. Exactly. And the Mets suck with bases loaded. Yeah, why is that? Right? Even with bases loaded with less than 2 outs, they have problems because they don't put the bat on the ball. There have been too many times this year where they would have runners in scoring position or guys in second and third or bases loaded where they struck out with less than 2 outs. Put the ball in play. Even if you hit the ball on the ground, that could be a possible in and end double play. There might be a mistake. They might turn the double play slow where you might beat it out. You might get a run in just by that. Putting the ball in play can have so many things happen. It is just mind-boggling how they can't do it. It's so frustrating. So goddamn frustrated. And, and again, I still believe John says the Mets, in my opinion, dropped the ball by not adding the starter at the deadline. John, we will get to that. I promise. I've said that from the get-go. The Mets couldn't get better drastically offensively, in my opinion, at this deadline. All they could have done to make this team better was to get bullpen help. They did that. And to get a starter. And not a Paul Blackburn type. A top 3 starter. At least one. And I know the prices were high, but they had to bite the bullet. And we're going to get to that next topic right now. Right? The no ace Mets rotation. That is beautifully put, in my opinion. You don't have to agree, but I agree. Yeah, Truman, Suarez in the 5-hole. Fine. But we all knew the Mets weren't getting Suarez. I brought up Suarez in the first couple of trade deadline shows. But here's the problem. They ended up not trading any of these infielders at all, which, again, makes no sense because ultimately Acuna's back in the minors. Mauricio Vientos Beatty don't play every day, and you're still causing the same issue with this roster. It doesn't make sense. It needed to be split. You needed to get rid of some of these guys for additional help. There is no way in hell that you couldn't get a top 3 starter by trading Acuna or trading Beatty or Mauricio or Vientos, 2 of those guys, and maybe a top prospect or 2. And you don't think a team that had a top 3 starter wouldn't have taken that? You're out of your mind. You get 2 guys that are already major league ready that are making no money, and you can get 2 prospects out of it. You want one of the pitching prospects? Good. We'll have a conversation about that. And you could have gave him another position player prospect in your top 10. Why not? What is stopping you? Nothing. What is stopping David Stearns? I'm going to tell you, right? He's afraid to make the big move. He doesn't want to trade his top prospects. And that's the problem. Right? The guys that we traded, Drew Gilbert, he was falling. We all know that. Jesus Baez was a pretty decent prospect, but nothing special. He was blocked tremendously by 19 guys on this roster and in the minors. You could have done it. You didn't do it because you're afraid to do it. Just like too many Met fans are afraid to pull the trigger. And ultimately, it's probably going to cost us, unfortunately, in the playoffs. I'm sorry. Yeah, Truman, Suarez went cheap, but again, it wasn't about the price. It was about the Mets not looking for a third baseman. Because according to David Stearns, we have one. No, we don't, but we have one. We have 4 of them. Pick one. That's the problem. They needed to, there's too much indecision on David Stearns' part, in my opinion, right? Pick 2 guys that you think are going to be part of this team, the short term and long term. If it was Vientos, Mauricio's, fine. I'm not going to argue. But make a decision. You not making a decision on any of these guys are the reason why we're in this fucking pickle in the first place. There needed to be 2 of those guys out of the 4 in Acuna, Mauricio, Beatty, and Vientos that needed to be traded in deals. There is no reason why any of those 2 guys shouldn't be on another team right now, bringing in better pieces here. There is no way a team would say no to an Acuna Mauricio package or a Vientos Acuna or Acuna Beatty or Acuna Vientos and add a prospect or 2 to get a top line starter in here. Regardless of who you want as a top line starter, pick one. You don't think a team would have took a 4 package deal for one? Absolutely. Absolutely they would. David Stearns did not want to do it because he has too much indecision. Because he doesn't know who's going to be our third baseman. Nobody knows who's their third baseman. We haven't had a third baseman all season. But his indecision is why all these guys are still in the organization and why we don't have a starting pitcher in here. That is on David Stearns. That is only on David Stearns. That is his fault for not doing his job in the offseason. And now it came to the trade deadline. And ultimately, I knew he wasn't going to get a starter because he wasn't trading these freaking guys. I said it from the beginning. You need to get 2 of these guys off the roster. It doesn't make sense to have 4 guys playing similar positions because it doesn't benefit the team. It doesn't benefit the team. You're having guys that are sent to the minors and they're just staying there. Nobody's taking advantage of the third base position. Nobody's taking advantage of any position that they have or any opportunity they have. They've been basically at best. And we're still in the same problem, same boat. But you could have ultimately fixed something that has been a major problem all season. You couldn't fix the lineup. There is nobody out there. You weren't getting Suarez. If you were going to trade those 2 guys, maybe I would have a conversation. Maybe they would think about Suarez. But they didn't do that. He wasn't thinking about that. He never was thinking, and I don't care what anybody says. Teams were asking for Acuna and Vientos and Beatty and Mauricio. He wasn't willing to do it, clearly, because we didn't get nobody for those guys. So he failed. So when this rotation ultimately fails in the playoffs, and they're already falling apart by the seams now, he failed. He didn't do it in the offseason because he doesn't want to give long-term deals to top pitchers. By the way, guys, you're never going to get a top pitcher in here if you're not going to, or a top 3 starter if you're going to not give long-term deals. That's just a fact. So you're going to get a lot of these retreads, a lot of guys that are on the brink of not being very good pitchers, and they're going to be reclamation projects. That's what you're going to continue to get here with David Stearns. Now, that's why everybody's living or dying off these pitching prospects, which is the dumbest thing to do. We dealt with Generation K. We dealt with Generation K 2.0. We've dealt with this shit already. It really doesn't work. It does not work. I'm sorry. This day and age of baseball, it doesn't work. Prioritize your position player prospects. Prioritize them. Because you already got too many infielders that were top prospects at a point. You can't play them all. I'd rather prioritize position players over pitching prospects because you just don't know. At least with the position players, you have more of an understanding that they could be better. The pitching prospects are so up in the air. And according to David Stearns and Major League Baseball, these pitchers get hurt so often. So why are you putting all your money in these guys when it comes to, well, look how good they're pitching? But don't pitchers get hurt so often? So why are you prioritizing pitching in your farm system then? Fuck yeah, Emerson. I do that in a heartbeat. But Stearns is not going to do it. That's the problem. I give all the money in the world to Scooble. We hope one of these top pitching prospects turn into Scooble. But is it likely? No. It's probably not likely. It's very unlikely. And the last thing we need is these goddamn prospect pitchers being back-end rotation guys. Because if they're not that good, they're going to be back on the back end of the rotation guys, which the Mets have about 20 of. We don't need more of the back end of the rotation guys. We just don't. If these guys are so good, bring them up. Let's see what they got. Because we don't have time for this nonsense. Ultimately, David Stearns failed. If we don't get where we need to be, and that should be a World Series, by the way, right? You got to the NLCS. You need an upgrade. You got to get to the World Series. Now, do you win it? I don't know. But at least get to the next step. That should be the goal. But don't tell me that it's about winning the World Series and you're not doing everything to obtain that or try to obtain that and try to get to that goal because you didn't. Your philosophy does not work. It didn't work with the Brewers. You tried that for 8 years. Yeah, you made the playoffs, but you didn't get to where you needed to get. You got as far as the Mets did last year with the Brewers. That is what you did in your tenure. Because again, when you talk about sustainability and making the playoffs every year, it's fun on paper. It's fun when you think about it. But when you still continue to lose in the playoffs year after year after year, you're going to get questioned of, well, why can't you get over the hump? Because that's why he ultimately was gone and why the Mets had a chance of getting David Stearns was because he couldn't get any further with the Brewers for whatever reason. They got as far as the Mets did last year on an unexpected year, where Brewers teams were better than what the Mets teams were last year, when he had better Brewers teams than the Mets were last year in his tenure with the Brewers. So what are we doing here? Your philosophy doesn't work. If it was so successful, why didn't you win? Because you have everything at your disposal as the New York Mets president of baseball operations. You got the money, and the farm system is better than it's been in probably 20 years. Over the last 2 seasons, this farm system never has been as good as it's been probably in the last 20 years. Probably since David Wright and Jose Reyes. Like, this is the problem. There was opportunities to get a top starter in the offseason. You don't want to spend long-term deals on these guys because you're concerned about the risk reward. Okay. But yet your short-term deals constantly get hurt. and constantly aren't very good. So even when they come back from injury, there isn't like, oh, here comes Max Fried coming back from injury, or Corbin Burns, or this guy, or that guy. No, we're talking, oh, here comes Sean Manaea come back. Oh, here comes Koda Senga come back. Oh, here comes Frankie Montas coming back. Oh, shit, I can't wait for Tyler McGill to come back. That's what you're worried about. This is what we're talking about here. We're talking about guys who have been injured this year that aren't very good, or maybe a little bit above average. Nothing special. At least if a guy's a top starter, I could say, oh, we got a top starter. Like if Jacob deGrom was injured and he's coming back, then you should get excited. We don't have that. Sean Manaea doesn't excite me. I'm sorry to say, that might piss off Met fans, but you fall in love way too quickly with a pitcher. You can fall in love with guys that have done it once for you, and ultimately they failed at the end. Sean Manaea broke down at the end because he couldn't throw that many innings because either he has been injured in the last couple of seasons or he hasn't pitched very well. And he got to the point last year where he threw too many innings and he got gassed when you needed them the most in the NLCS. Yeah, I agree. Epler wasn't the greatest GM. I'd be out first. Sandy Olson as well, right? Sandy Olson was hesitant, but when he finally did it, because he eventually did it with the Yoenis Cespedes trade for Michael Fulmer, it changed everything for that team. Now, it only changed it for 1 year, but we know that in that Kansas City series, in the World Series, it was a few errors and a few bad defensive plays. That basically what it was that kind of halted us from winning the World Series. It was defense. That was the problem. That ultimately what it was in that series. It was bad outfield play, bad throws, and a couple of infield mistakes. That was basically the World Series. Even Epler, right? I was not happy with what Epler did. Getting Vogelback, getting Naquin, getting Ruff, getting Michael Givens for the bullpen. I wasn't happy with what he did. But the holes that we had, he was able to get, regardless of the names, right? I wanted JD Martinez. We got Vogelback, all right? Whatever. But he went and filled every hole that we needed. We needed a DH. That was the problem that year. We needed another bullpen arm. He got it. Now, was it the best on the market? No. But he went to do it. When you don't get nothing to help the rotation, that is a failed job, in my opinion. You got the center fielder. Fine. Right? Cedric Mullins hasn't been good since becoming a Met, but we know he's better offensively than Tyrone Taylor. We'll see it at some point. You fixed the bullpen. The bullpen needed help. You got the bullpen. Great. You looked aggressive doing it. That's why when I was like, wow, we did get bullpen. Look how aggressive he's been. I was expecting him to get a top 3 starter in here. I'd do it. He was looking aggressive enough where he was going to make that move. He wasn't afraid to do it. He ultimately was afraid. The last hole you had to fill was a rotation arm, a top 3 rotation arm. Didn't have to be a top ace, but it could have been a very solid number 3, and you didn't do it. For whatever the reason was, mostly because you didn't want to overpay or give any of your top 7 prospects. That is on David Stearns. You let this happen. You allowed the trade deadline to ultimately have an overpay. You had to overpay to get a top-line starter in here when all you had to do was spend money to get a top-line starter, and you didn't have to worry about trading prospects for a top starter. Maybe you would need a top, another back of the rotation arm to help with innings. You failed. You can't have it both ways. You can't be afraid to overpay for a top starter and also not pay a long-term deal to a top starter in the offseason. You cannot do both. You can't do either. You have to pick one. That is why the philosophy doesn't work. And if you were never going to get a starting pitcher, you should have brought up one of these top pitcher prospects so we can see if they can help us. Not wait until August 15th or 16th because you want that year of control still. That's not a winning mentality. That is a losing mentality. That is something that you're not pivoting from your philosophy. The best GMs in baseball pivot from their philosophy or their thoughts and plans of how to run the team. Sometimes you have to skew away from that. The best teams, the teams that make the important moves, the best moves, are the ones that go away from their comfortable little chair and they move from it and say, we got to change this up a little bit. What I'm doing is not working. It hasn't worked. And he failed. Sorry to say. And the Reds are losing in the 7th. That's a good sign. So the Mets can gain a half a game on them and be a little bit more comfortable in the 3rd wild card spot. So the no ace rotation is probably what I'm most concerned about. I still believe this offense is because there's another level or two to this offense, in my opinion. We all know this offense can be better. Where is this rotation getting better? Clay Holmes he pitched decent his last time out, but he only threw 75 pitches because the Mets are deathly afraid of throwing him more. So that doesn't give me no confidence. Frankie Montas, if you look, I have Frankie Montas pitching in game 2, but I have it with an asterisk because he might come in with an opener. They might have an opener come in first and then Frankie Montas, or Montas first, then somebody else to replace him. So we can't trust him. Kodai Senga, Mr. 4 innings, is pitching tomorrow against Woodruff, who's been pretty good for them. I don't trust Kodai Senga. And Sean Manaea, he gave up a 5 spot last time out. And he didn't look great. So, I'm not confident in this rotation because I don't think there's a big upside. There might be a slight upside to get us through the rest of the season. But for the playoffs, good luck trying to find a game 1 starter because I don't trust any of them. David Peterson would be the guy. But even him, who we have to count on every 5th day or 6th day to be great and give you innings because nobody else can. So can this rotation survive the season and get us into the playoffs? Sure. It's not that hard to do it because, again, you're firmly in a decent spot to make the playoffs. But ultimately, when you don't have a guaranteed game 1 starter or somebody you can trust every time out, how do you have confidence in that? I just don't get it. And Marcus, this is a great point. Let me see if I can click on the comment and it works. Hey, there we go. Perfect. Finally. So I agree. When you want to use an opener, wouldn't you want to use it for Kodai Senga, who can never go deep? Who throws 90 pitches in 4 innings? Wouldn't you use an opener then? Shouldn't you use the opener for the first 2 innings? So if he is going to only pitch 4 innings, he can pitch inning 3 to 7. Wouldn't that help more? Instead of putting an opener with a bad starter in Montas, who might get shellacked and only pitch 2-3 innings because he's getting killed. So you still got to use 3 or 4 pitchers in that outing. So yeah, I think that's a great point, Marcus. You should use an opener for Kodai Senga if you're worried about his innings and not going deep into games and not throwing more than 90 pitches in 4 innings. That would make more sense. But they're so discombobulated and they have no idea what to do with this rotation because they don't have a plan. Their plan was thinking that Sean Manaea was going to come back and be an ace-like, which he's not an ace. Sorry to burst everybody's bubble. Manaea is probably a number 2 at best, probably on a good day at 3. At his best, he's the number 2. And most times he's going to be a number 3. So you got a bunch of number 3s, a lot of number 4s, and a lot of number 5s. So again, please tell me who's pitching game 1 of any series in the playoffs. Because there is go to Mendoza. If you give Mendoza truth serum right now, and you ask him the question, who is your game 1 starter in the playoffs? I don't even think he can give you a straight name. Because I'm going to put up a poll tomorrow. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a little bit of fun. I'm going to put up a poll Who is your game one starter? I think I did this 2 months ago. I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna put it on the community page on my channel, and I'm gonna put the vote. Who is your game one starter in the playoffs? And I'll put 4 guys. I'm not gonna put 5. I'll put 4. The obvious choices, right? Obviously, the choices are Manaea, Senga, Clay Holmes, and David Peterson. Now, David Peterson will probably win, but I can guarantee you there'll be a good number of votes for Senga and Manaea. But ultimately, David Peterson will probably win, probably get about 50% of the vote, maybe a little more. But that's the problem. See what I'm saying, Adorable? Like, that's the thing. It's probably David Peterson. Do you know the contenders on this team? And we talk about them all the time, right? The Cubs, the Padres, the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Brewers, right? All those teams, they know who their game one starter is. They know. For the Brewers, they might have 2 guys that they can probably throw game one. They can probably throw Woodruff. I know Mashowski is kind of hurt right now, but he's going to be back. So they'll have Woodruff at the very least pitching game one. They also got Peralta. So they can throw 3 guys that can throw game one. The Phillies, we know, right? It's probably Zach Wheeler. But they can probably also throw Suarez, who's been damn good this year. Right? The Cubs got Imanaga. Like, what are we talking about here? I can name every contender that is in the National League that right now is in the playoffs, that has a game one or even a game 2 starter that they're probably confident in. They can have, each one of these teams have 2 guys that can throw game one. Who do the Mets have? There's no confidence for nobody. And again, if I put up a poll, who is your game one starter for the Philadelphia Phillies? I guarantee you 99.9% of them are going to choose Zach Wheeler. And that's the problem. That's why I'm concerned. I'm not even talking, again, people misconstrue or don't understand the fact that I'm not talking about during the season. You can get by with a rotation like this and make the playoffs in a 162-game season. You can do that. You can get by. But when the games get shorter and it's a 5-game, 3, 5, or 7-game series, depending on where you're playing in the playoffs, it's very hard to tell me that anybody is trustworthy going into a series. That's the biggest problem. That is my most biggest concern because I still got confidence in this rotation. Senga, game one starter, congratulate. Please keep that. Keep that mindset, please, Ali. I love that you're confident in that. But I'd be damned if Kodai Senga is pitching anywhere before game 3. And even that doesn't excite me. I don't trust him. He constantly puts people on base, and against better teams, they're going to destroy him. Because you can't continue to always put men on base, because Wheeler and Holmes, both of those guys, always put men on base with walks constantly. Clay Holmes and Kodai Senga have problem with walks, because I think the problem with Kodai Senga is that his forkball, his ghost pitch, isn't as deadly as it was in 2023. More guys are laying off of it, and they're waiting for his fastball, because his fastball is straight as a whip, straight as an arrow. So if you lay off the ghost pitch that he throws for mostly balls and out of the zone, if they're laying off of that more often than not, his pitch count's going to go up, and they're waiting on his fastball. It's a lot easier to hit the fastball when you don't have to worry about the ghost fork pitch. And I think that's the biggest problem with Kodai Senga. He constantly walks people. He doesn't strike out enough people, and he puts too many people on base. Now, you can get away with that when you're facing a bad Marlins team when we face them, a bad Pirates team, or a bad Nationals team. But when you face the better teams, they're going to beat you. Constantly putting people on base. So that is the problem. Yeah, Mike, that's the problem. That's the thing, though. When these guys come back from injuries, you get excited because most of these guys will be aces on other teams. That's why when people were so excited that Manaea's coming back, I think people are nuts because he's not as good as people think, and it's so annoying. Same thing with Kodai Senga. Oh, we'll get Kodai Senga back in a month. Great, get excited. I don't. They don't excite me. That is the problem. Like, I get excited when I hear Tyler Glasnow coming back if I'm a Dodger fan, or Yamamoto, or Snell. Every one of them are world better than any of the guys the Mets have. Johnny, that's the problem. Senga's 50-50. That is not good enough. Even Sean Manaea, even if he's almost as good as last year, I still think he's a number 2 at best. And even that, I don't think it's enough. Like, any matchup we go into the playoffs with, I don't think we have the pitching matchup. Now, ultimately, that doesn't ultimately matter in the grand scheme of things. It might not matter in the playoffs, right? It might be other things. But again, the confidence level is not there, man. It really isn't. That's why I don't think the upside is big enough for the rotation to make me confident that things are going to turn around there. With the offense, we all know there's another level or two to this offense. And I don't even think they got to get to the highest level. I just think they need to be average. Right now, they're very below average. Get to average, and it's a tremendous difference. That's why I'm more confident in the lineup figuring it out and getting to the next level than the rotation. That is why I complain more about the rotation, because this rotation, you can get through a line. You can get through a season. Even this lineup, again, guys, we have 63 wins and we're 2.5 games out of a division with the lineup being as bad as it's been. So you can even get through a season with the lineup not performing well, while the rotation is not performing well either. You can find a way to make the playoffs. And we're only 2.5 games out of the division for as bad as so-called played. That's why the confidence level is much higher for me with the lineup than the rotation. And that is why I continue to complain about the rotation, because I don't see the upside at all. I just don't. Pat, I don't care if you go to a 12-man rotation. This lineup is not good. And that's the way I always feel. Yeah, but G. Miller, it's, again, but the offense stinks. I understand that. 100%. I agree with you on that. But we all know this lineup has another level. The pitching has stinked for too long. And they've played well in April and May. And that's nice. But as I said, they were going to break down. Manaea coming back didn't excite me. It just doesn't. Yeah, the problem has been the offense. Has been. But the offense has scored a bunch of runs in a game or in a series. Right? They haven't been consistent with it. But I know that nobody's going 6 innings except for Peterson. I know they're giving 5 innings or less and probably not a good start. That's the problem. That's the problem. And to finish up the pitching situation really quick, and I did a little bit of notes here just to give everybody some stats here, right? Now, I'm gonna just give you, the Mets have played 115 games this year. Only 34 games. 34 games. The Mets pitchers, starters, have gone 6 innings or more. In 115 games, 34 games, Mets pitching has gone 6 innings or more. So that means in those other, 81 games, right? Right? Let's see. 115 minus 34. Yes. 81 games, the bullpen has had to come in more often than not. A lot more often than not. 34 games out of 115. And 17 of those, right? 15? Yeah, 15. 15 of 22 starts from David Peterson. So that means almost half of those 6+ innings have come from David Peterson. You had 7 from Senga, 7 from Holmes, none from Montas, none from Minaya, 3 from Cannon, 3 from McGill. The guys who were somewhat mainstays in this rotation. So just think, only 3 guys in your rotation has made the majority of your 6+ innings out of 115 games. So 29 games, only 3 guys have gone 6 innings or more. And the other 5 was from Cannon and McGill combined. Obviously, Cannon's gone and McGill's still hurt. That is a big deal. Don't think that's not a big deal, because the reason why your bullpen became shit and you had to go crazy to acquire bullpen arms was because you overused those guys in the first 2 months because these guys weren't going deep enough. And you overused them. That probably caused Minter to get hurt. That probably caused Danny Young to get hurt. That caused Brazaban and Garrett and Stanek to get overused, where they basically were terrible in the late month of May into June, in all of June. And Brazaban is in the minors. And Reed Garrett's kind of looking a little bit better. And Stanek has been not good. He had 1 solid month, and after that, he's been terrible. Because you probably overused him. So now we got guys like Helsley and Soto and Rogers that are constantly coming into games because these guys can't go deep into games. 115 games we played. 34 have gone 6 innings or more. We are on the bottom third of teams on overall starters going 6 innings or more. The bottom third are teams like the Pirates, the Rockies, the Nationals, the Marlins. And some of those teams are better than us when it comes to the rotation and 6+ innings. The teams that are contenders are all in the top tier, on the top third. That's a big difference, guys. Because the Phillies, who everybody thinks are really much better than the Mets, have had no bullpen all season. Obviously, because they needed a closer, and their bullpen's not very good. Their bullpen's bottom third in the league before they got Duran and Robertson. Yet, they're 2.5 games on the Mets. Why is that? Because their rotation is better, and even their lineup is slightly better when it comes to overall stats. I gave you the stats earlier in the show. So there you go. There's your problem. That is why the rotation is a bigger problem that people are talking about. People are infatuated with the lineup. And I completely understand that they have not been good. But don't think for a second. And again, 2 months of the season is just under 60 games. For the last 3 other months, right? We're in August now. So from June, July, and now August, which is above 60 games now, the New York Mets have had issues ever since the end of May. When it comes, and even in April and May, they obviously in April, you're not going to throw these guys 7 or 8 innings every start because you're just building them up, right? They're coming out of spring training. You're taking them out early. So that has been the biggest problem. May was their best month when it came to guys going 6 innings. And it was mostly from Peterson, Holmes, and Senga. May was the biggest month with those guys going 6 innings. That was why May was one of our better months of the season. Don't think that's not in line with why the Mets were good. So even with the lineup being bad, you see how important having starters do what they need to do. Because when you're going deeper into games, more often than not, your starters pitching well. So I'm really annoyed why more people are so infatuated. They're infatuated with the lineup because of the money involved with these players. Because it's a cheap rotation, people are just going to sweep it under the rug. But ultimately, we know how important pitching becomes when you get to the playoffs and why the starters are important. And again, let me say that one more time for people before we end it with the Brewers series really quickly. 34 games out of 115. Only 34 games has a Mets starter have gone 6 innings or more. You want to talk about 7 innings? About 4 games out of 115. All right? 6 innings or more. And we had 1 complete game this year by David Peterson. So 6 innings or more, only 34 out of 115 games, they've gone 6 innings or more, where the Mets are on the bottom third of baseball with going 6 innings or more. And they're in the bottom tier with all the worst teams in baseball, by the way. The White Sox, the Colorado Rockies, the Nationals, Pittsburgh, those teams. The top tier, the top level of the top third of baseball are all the teams that the Mets are contending against for the playoffs from the American League and National League. So the other 81 games, you've got less than 6 innings. And there have been too many 4-inning games, 4-inning starts from these pitchers, way too many. Again, check the game logs from all the pitchers that I mentioned. Peterson, Senga, Holmes, Montas, Manaea, Cannon, McGill. The guys that have been in the rotation for at some point this year. There's been a lot of 4-inning games from these guys. Way too many. Probably more of those 4-inning games than the 6+ inning games. That's the problem. So there's your problem within itself. So again, guys, with the Mets and Brewers preview, you got Senga pitching tomorrow against Woodruff. I think we're all going to give that pitching matchup to Woodruff. Not sure if Montas is pitching in game 2, but when? Is he going to start the game? Or is there going to be an opener for an inning or 2 and then Montas is going to come in? Who knows? Henderson's pitching. I think we can give the matchup to the Brewers. Manaea gave up a 5 spot last time against the Guardians. Didn't pitch ultimately well against Priester. You want to call it even? We'll call it even. So the best team in baseball right now is the Milwaukee Brewers. They've been red hot. They've been playing extremely well. They play a different brand of baseball. They're not a big power hitting team. We saw them in the playoffs last year in the wild card. They'll hit their home run. They'll hit a home run every now and then. But they're ultimately going to be pesky like the Cleveland Guardians were, right? They're going to base hit you. They're going to hit you to death. They'll hit those singles. They'll take their singles. They'll take their doubles and occasionally hit the home run. But they're a pesky team. So is this the time where the Mets, who had really good moments last year in Milwaukee in the postseason in a wild card series, can they revitalize themselves heading back to where it all started last year in the playoffs in Milwaukee, Wisconsin? Can it wake up the boys in blue? Can they revitalize themselves? We shall see, guys. I'll see you tomorrow in the Mets pregame, which will be around 6:45 tomorrow. It's already ready. It's already up. So if you stay here, it's going to redirect you to that pregame for tomorrow. Hit that like button early, guys. As you know, the more likes we get before the stream, the more it's going to get at the top of the list for people who want to see that type of content, guys. So with that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to Mets Talk Live right here on the Mets Off Day and on the channel and on X. Have a good day, guys. Let's go Mets, and I'll see you tomorrow for the pregame show for Mets and Brewers, guys. Have a good night.
Put Bob on the mic, spitting truth from the heights. Queens unite under stadium lights. Bright nights, 7 train rides. Dreams born in the real hum. Brooklyn to Queens, yeah, we all about that outcome. This our time, this our cheer.